الحين جات الصورة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new episode broadcasting to you live from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Ask Huda, where I'll try to answer whatever I can from your questions, insha'Allah Azza wa Jal. And we do apologize for the late arrival, but this was due to a technical error, and alhamdulillah, we're live. The first question is from Azim, and he says, is reading Taraweeh compulsory? And the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ tells us that whoever prays the 5 mandatory prayers after offering good ablution and praying them on time with submissiveness, with khushu', then he has a covenant with Allah that Allah would forgive his sins. So the mandatory prayers are the 5 daily prayers we all know of. Taraweeh is voluntary. It is something that if you do it, you're highly rewarded, and if you don't do it, you're not sinful for doing that, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Maymuna says, what body parts should be covered in prayers, and what body parts can be shown? Is tight dresses allowed to be worn during prayers? Explain in detail, please. A woman must cover all of her body, and this is the consensus of scholars, with the exception of the face and the hands. Other than that, she must cover. The majority of scholars, the Maliki, Shafi'i, and the Hanbali schools of thought, say that she must cover her feet as well. The Hanafi and some scholars say that this is not mandatory, but the most authentic opinion is that she must cover all of her body in prayer except for the face and for the hands. And what about wearing tight clothes? The majority of scholars say that this is not recommended and this is sinful. However, the prayer is valid. So if a woman prays in tight clothing that show and expose her curves and her body structure, she is sinful for doing that, because the norm is that she covers herself with ample dress that does not expose her body curves and that is not transparent, cannot be, must not be see-through. But if she does wear something that is see-through, her prayer is invalid. If it shows the color of her skin, or it shows what's underneath it from her body, then her prayer is invalid. However, if she wears something that is tight, like a tight blouse, or let's say trousers, for example, she is sinful and she is wrong. But the majority of scholars say that her prayer is valid, providing it is covering her awrah. And her body is all awrah, with the exception of the face and the hands in salat, as mentioned earlier. Ali Raza is asking and saying that our deleting of ayat or pictures of ayat, is it haram or prohibited from a mobile phone? First of all, let's talk about it when it is in the written form on a piece of paper. What's the ruling on having an ayah on a piece of paper? This is permissible. What's the ruling on burning it or disposing of it because there is no need for it anymore? As in the case of newspapers that have verses of the Quran written on it, or a torn page from a book that has an ayah. So what is the best thing to do? The best thing to do is either bury it in a very safe and remote place, or to burn it. You can also shred it if the end product is very minute, to the extent that you cannot recognize the letters written. When it comes to digital form, as in the case of mobile phones, PDAs, computers, there isn't an actual Quran written. There isn't a paper and ink used. It's only digits, zeros and ones. So therefore, once you switch it off, it all goes away. And if you delete it, then there's nothing wrong in that, because you're not humiliating the Quran or disrespecting it. So by this, inshallah, there's no problem in doing that. Nahla says, is it compulsory to shave newborn child's head on the 7th day? Is it compulsory? The answer is no. There are a number of etiquettes that the Prophet ﷺ had directed us to do to a newborn. Among them is what is known as a tahniq. And the tahniq is to chew a very small, tiny bit of date until it almost dissolves and it has no mass to it, and then take that small piece and put it in the ceiling of the mouth of that child. And this was the practice of the Prophet ﷺ with all newborns. Some scholars say that this is only limited to the Prophet ﷺ or to those who are scholars and pious people. And others say, no, this is to all. But when the Prophet was there, ﷺ, of course, they sought his blessing through this procedure, where the first thing that would enter the stomach of a newborn child would be this small piece of honey or of dates or whatever is put in the ceiling of his mouth. This is known as tahniq. And then the Prophet told us, ﷺ, to shave the head of a newborn. And scholars differed. Is this only for a male newborn or also the female newborn? I personally believe that this is for both, because the Prophet ﷺ justified this by saying, وَأَمِيطُوا عَنْهُ الْأَذَى, and remove the filth and the dirt from him or off him. And this includes the male and the female, because when they are born, they have this layer on their skull that is due to being in the womb for so long. So by shaving the head, also the hair and that layer of filth and things that may be harmful when the child grows up is safely removed. The Prophet ordered us ﷺ also to weigh the hair and to give in charity its weight in silver. So if the hair weighs like 3 grams, 5 grams of silver, we look how much that costs in our currency and we give it to the poor. This is all part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Also, he instructed us to give the child a name on the 7th day. So we should name that child, but if we name it earlier, then there is no problem, or name it later. To circumcise a male child on the 7th day also is part of the sunnah. And to offer the aqiqah, the sacrifice. For a male, we slaughter 2 sheep or 2 rams. And for the female, we are told to slaughter 1 sheep or 1 ram. What about giving the adhan in the right ear of the child once it is born? And some even go further and say, and offering the iqamah on the left ear. This is not part of the authentic sunnah. As for the iqamah, no one says that it is recommended or it's from the sunnah. As for the adhan, a large chunk of scholars say that this is part of the sunnah, but it is not. There is no authentic hadith backing it up. So it is not part of the sunnah to do it, and it's not recommended to do it either. So is it compulsory to shave? I think through this explanation we know that it is not compulsory, it is not mandatory, because there are 5 rulings in Islam. And every Muslim should know these rulings when he applies them on parts of the deen. There is mandatory or obligatory, known as wajib. And the opposite, there is haram. There is prohibited or forbidden. So wajib, if you do it, you are rewarded by Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you don't do it, you are sinful and will be held accountable at the side of Allah Azza wa Jal. Haram or prohibited or something that's forbidden, if you do it, you're sinful. But if you refrain from it, then you will be rewarded if you do that for the sake. Then you have something that is known as, and this is something that is liked, recommended, something that Islam encourages, and its counterpart is something that is not part of what Islam do. So mustahab or recommended, if you do it, you're rewarded, and if you do it, you're not sinful. And of the boy is a sunnah. It's high. And something, if you do what's ruling on that? His prayer is valid, but he had done something that is makruh because he abandoned the sunnah.
And make us of those who guide and are rightly guided.
We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah we'll be right back.